great day for work here at the Happy Healthy Workplace podcast. I'm Kimberly Ficklin, your host. And every week we talk to professionals just like you all around the world because we want to find out what they do to create a profitable business, the kind of business where people really want to work. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happy Healthy Workplace podcast. First, I want to thank you all for listening, supporting the podcast, and helping to create profitable businesses where people really want to work. This is the first episode of 2020, and you may have noticed that I haven't released a podcast since early December. Well, I took the advice of Carlos Hidalgo in episode 19, and I created a work-life boundary for myself. I took a month of hiatus to go on a Costa Rican trip with my husband and to spend time with my family during the holidays. And I'll tell you what, I highly encourage that you do the same. And if you haven't yet listened to episode 19 with Carlos, I really recommend that too. So stay tuned for new episode releases. We already have an amazing lineup for the new year. You're definitely going to want to stick around. We also have some of our reoccurring guests already scheduled, like today's guest, Karen Rayburn. And I know you've heard about Karen before. She's the owner at The Profitable Firm. And PF is the creative agency exclusively for accountants. They operate under 4 value pillars: creativity, integrity, generosity, and rest. And in episode 10, Karen shares with us why rest is so important in the workplace. And in episode 12, she shared with us why creativity is so important. Today, Karen's going to chat with us about generosity. The Profitable Firm's generosity pillar says this: giving and giving things away is core to our marketing. We give a lot away for free because we want to give you time to see how we work and think. And we make a particular point of giving to charitable organizations that we're involved in, both pro bono work on websites, design, content, or strategy, as well as cash gifts. Alrighty, Karen, first, welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Oh, you're very welcome. We love our friends of the show. I love our reoccurring guests. This is a lot of fun when we get to hear from people over and over. And I know the listeners love your episodes. And today we get to hear about PF's third pillar, which is generosity. So, Karen, let's jump right in. Let's start with the main reason that this is one of the 4 company pillars.
Yeah, so as with our other 4 pillars, which if you haven't heard the other podcast yet, they are creativity, integrity, generosity, and rest. And all of these 4 are things that are important to me personally as the owner, but that is not the sole reason that they are our pillars. They were things that I considered personally at first to say what's important to us as a company, and it makes sense that it's important to me as the owner. But then discussed it with the team, and now we hire and fire by our pillars and our values. We also have 6 values that we stand by at PF, which is probably a whole nother episode or episodes on its own, as that's kind of a new thing as well. But the pillars are something that is foundational to who we are and how the company runs. Our values are more like how we do the work. The reason generosity is one of those 4 pillars, why it's so critical, is not only is that a thing that's important to me personally as the owner and as a human, but we want to be the kind of company that shows by example what we encourage our clients who are accountants to be. Because the principles of content marketing, which is what we teach to accountants and we help them understand, and we do outsourced marketing for accountants by way of content marketing. And one of the solid principles of content marketing is that people take time to come round to a new supplier. And so you provide them with a variety of content for free until they are ready, until some of their doubts and fears and concerns have been covered, have been addressed. And so one of the big reasons that generosity is an important factor to us as a company is that it helps us to live out what we believe and what we tell accountants they need to be doing in their own marketing. And generosity means that we give away information as much as possible, because you can get information anywhere. You want to learn how to use LinkedIn or Twitter or any kind of social media, there are free videos and webinars and courses and guides and articles and PDFs and blog posts everywhere. You do not actually have to sign up and pay for anything if you want to get information. So we believe in that at PF. We want to help accountants. We genuinely just want to help them. And if we give away lots and lots of information and they get everything they need and they don't actually need to hire us, that is fine by us. And the reason it's fine by us is that people receive information free and they pay for implementation. So PF charges accountants for things that require assistance or help. So you have the three categories of DIY, do it yourself, DWY, done with you, and then DFY, which is done for you. Those are the three categories. Anything that's DIY, you just give away people's information, tell them everything that you know, everything that would help them, everything that you have learned in working with your audience. And then most of the time what happens is people go, wow, that is really super helpful. I do not have time to do this myself, so I will pay to get help to either do it with them or get it done for me. So that, in terms of services and information, that's why generosity is important to us in that way, in a content marketing vein. It's also important to us just personally as being part of this world, this creation that we're part of, that we have generously received, air, homes, sunshine, light, families. We've generously received so many things. We also want to generously give and be people who give not just information, but give time and give attention and give part of ourselves and our heart as well.
So a lot of things came up while you were saying that. I'm thinking about a bunch of stuff. And I love the free things because I know, as business owners, one of the things that we struggle with, and I've heard it from other business owners in my mastermind group, is that, but if I give it away for free, why would they pay me? And my business coach says the same thing that you just said, and she says it all the time. Implementation is our value. People can do it DIY all the time, and they do. But there's also people who love the idea of what needs to be done, but don't have the time to do it, so they will purchase your services. They won't know anything about you if you're not being generous with your content.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard the same thing from accountants for sure. They're like, well, what if I give away all this information and somebody doesn't need me as an accountant? And whenever they ask that, I just ask right back, okay, so let's imagine you have this person, and this person reads the blogs and they watch the videos and they get all this stuff, and they either don't have the money or don't value your services enough to get help. Do you want that kind of person as a client? Or is that person ever going to spend money on getting help from you? And they go, oh, no, of course not. Because if time is more important to them than money, that's fine. That's no problem. I have no problem whatsoever in somebody saying, I have all the time in the world, so I'm going to do it myself. The reason we charge for implementation is none of us have all the time in the world. It's just a decision of what is my time worth? And I know for myself as a business owner, there are tons of things I used to do personally, either in the business or with clients or whatever it be, or even in my life, that I would use my time for. And the tighter my time requirement gets and the more valuable that my time is to me, the less I worry about what I spend on in some areas. I mean, even just personally having somebody to come and cut the grass at my house. I remember when I moved into the house, I did it once myself. And I was like, when I look at the number of hours total for me to go and get the lawnmower out of the shed and then set it all up and then cut all the grass, and I have like a wonky front and back garden that's all kind of rolling this way and that way and strange angles, and then to finish it and then to put everything in the bin and then to get tidied up. I mean, that was like 6 hours. And I thought, my goodness sake, what I could do with those 6 hours, that's just not worth it to me. And this is the decision that every person has to make when they're considering working, particularly with professional services, is how much time is this going to take me? And is it more worth it for me to spend that time or to pay somebody else so that I can use that time in a different way?
For sure. It made me think of something that I heard a business leader say many, many years ago when she was speaking to a group of women and said, hire out, stop trying to do everything on your own. She said, the dishes don't care who does them.
Seriously.
And the laundry doesn't care who does them, and the grass doesn't care who cuts it. So go ahead and hire somebody out to do that. And I always thought, and the way she put that.
I love it. And I do think it's really important to remember that everyone is at a different phase and a different place in their life. But sometimes we just have a mindset that that's not allowed. That's not what people do. That's what rich people do. I mean, I have somebody who cleans my house. She comes and she usually comes when I'm traveling for work, and she has a key, and she's a friend of mine, and I know her and trust her. And she comes and when I return from whatever event or work trip I've been and the whole house is sparkling, that is worth more to me than, oh my word, that is just worth so much. And I have friends who are like, oh no, I couldn't do that because and I'm like, why? And they say, well, because, and they don't actually have a reason. They just feel like that's their job and that people will look down on them for doing that. And I think we have to just forget about what other people think about where we outsource and what we spend money on. Like, we've talked about personal examples, but again, the same thing applies to your business. Some people outsource personal assistant, virtual assistant work, or scheduling things in their calendar, or getting stuff printed, or getting marketing work done. I mean, PF is an outsourced marketing agency. Some accountancy firms want to do it themselves with a little direction and support and accountability, and some of them just want us to do all the stuff for them. It doesn't mean that one firm is right and one firm is wrong. It means that each accounting firm has to decide where their time is best used and whether it's worth the money to have somebody who knows what they're doing take care of it in the background while you focus on what matters.
And not only that, but if you learn how to delegate pieces of your business out to other people, then within your business, you'll learn how to delegate out to your employees. And when you delegate out to your employees, it teaches your employees that you trust them, right? Even in your personal life, and saying, what can I do to begin to delegate some of these tasks that I'm holding on to that aren't serving me? Because if I freed up some of my time, I could be more generous.
Yes. Well, and I was going to mention that as well in terms of generosity in the team. We've had a lot of conversations amongst the team about generosity and what that means, because it's very important to remember that the profitable firm is a company that seeks to be profitable itself. We are not a charity. We are not in this to just give away everything. And I think that's another misconception about generosity. We talked about information versus implementation. That's one difference. The other one is to remember that you have a choice in the ways you show generosity and the people to whom you show it. So for us, generosity, there's a lower level of generosity that we give to all people. Well, all of our target audience, but anyone who wants to read it. We have articles on our blog about direction to give a photographer before they're doing a shoot for your website, or logo file formats and the ones you ought to use. There's things like that that would be useful for anyone, and they're welcome to it. And all the free stuff we create, we love for people to use it and share it and give it away to anyone. But then there's another level of generosity for our clients. So when somebody is in a paid monthly retainer relationship with us, and we take very seriously the relationship we have with our clients, because in order to do marketing for and with them, we've got to get to know them really well. We spend a lot of time investing in understanding their values, their people, why they do what they do, their location, the services they offer and how they deliver them and how they are different and what matters to them. So we spend a lot of time engaging with them. And one of our principles here that we work on in terms of being a company is charge for everything. We do charge for everything. We're not just going to, do this here and that there all the time. But even with that, even with charging for everything, from time to time, the client will ask for something and we go, you know what? We just did that for you as generosity pillar. And we say that to them. We tell them we want them to understand this has value. It's not that this was a nothing thing, so we didn't charge you. Technically, this ought to be charged, but we're doing this out of generosity because we have this relationship. And in the past, had some legacy clients where the relationship wasn't 100% where it ought to be. And either they kind of weeded themselves out slowly, or we just said, listen, I don't think it's working out. So we don't now really have a situation where we have clients that we don't think alike. But in the past, and this is how you learn, we had some clients who were, maybe trying to take advantage a little bit or not really understanding the value. And we would not have the same willingness, I suppose, to just be throwing around little extra things because that client wouldn't appreciate it. They wouldn't understand it. They wouldn't say, oh, wow, I really, I appreciate that I ought to have paid this, but you just took care of it and it took you 5 minutes and that was really kind. So I don't know if that makes sense, that there's a judgment call that you make on this extra level of generosity where you ought to be charging for something if you were being a real stickler, but we don't want to be a company where it looks like people are being penny pinched and that they're being what people sometimes call being nickeled and dimed to death, which I think is funny that it's become kind of a global statement despite all these different currencies. But people understand what that means, that you feel like you can't even ask for this tiny thing without getting charged. And we've always worked at PF at finding the balance of showing generosity whilst still remaining profitable. And as I said, there's layers. There's the non-client or the prospect. There's the client that we have a relationship with. And then there's, I suppose the highest level of client that we are literally good friends with and we would hang out with even if they weren't a client, or we'd go for a beer with them and not talk about anything really work related because we just enjoy their company. So there's different levels of generosity for different relationships. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, absolutely. And again, just like anything, flexibility in the workplace, like you say, not giving it all away, but recognizing when it's time to give something away. And really that adds, it's like a wow factor to your client, right? It's just in my corporate world, we used to call them royal treatments. And it's just giving some little thing that they would love. And it doesn't have to be big, right? It's just something because you've gotten to know your client well enough that you can say, oh, they would love this. Now, we're talking about a much smaller firm than, say, we've got, 1,000 employees. And you couldn't possibly probably know every client you have when you start to get, into the 100 or thousands or tens of thousands of clients. But your employees do know. Most of them do know. You have a salesperson, you have a marketing department, you have people that are connected with those clients. So let's drive this right back into how does this add value? How does generosity add value into the workplace for your employees, and then how that pays off into your clients?
Yeah, I think what it does for the employees is it honors the fact that they have relationships with the clients. So our team, we have a core team, and a couple of the team members are what we call client marketing managers. And that title reflects the fact that they are the point person for a bank of clients. They have a certain number of clients that they serve and that they are responsible for. And it's their job to get to know these clients, to make sure, like I said, that they understand their brands, their messaging, their audience, their style, their values. And they take that very seriously. I remember we hired a new employee, must have been in August, I think, and this is now November that we're talking. So he's been with us a couple months, and he took on a few clients that previously had been taken care of by somebody else. And I thought it was really interesting that he just picked up on this opportunity to get to know the clients. And because he was in a similar location to them, so he's just outside of London, and we had a couple clients in London that he was looking after. So he just arranged with one of these clients, just go for a beer one night, just meet him after work and go in and hang out. And he just did that. He didn't, be like, oh, is this okay? Can I do this? Do I take time to this? Like, he knows that that's how we work at PF, and that's what we do. Or if you're going to a particular location for an event, you make an effort to meet up with clients in that area and take them to lunch, or do something together with them. And that's just normal. And in addition to that, having the opportunity to, like, all the team members have these cards that are printed with the PF branding on them, and they'll say something like congrats or thinking of you or hello or you're the best. And they just have a block of these cards, and anytime something happens with one of their clients or someone they know, they can just dash off a card that's all PF branded and send it to them, or even a gift from time to time. I've seen client marketing managers saying, this client just had a baby, can we send them this gift? And now everybody knows that's just something that we do. They don't have to ask for permission. They just think of something and do it. If a client has somebody in their family who died, they send them some flowers or a contribution, or, they use their judgment, because like you said, it's not the size of the gift. It's the way that you thought of somebody, and it's the personality of it. I've spoken to so many accountants that are like, what do you do for, if somebody refers business to you, do you have like a package and you send them a bottle of wine, or you send them a spa certificate or something? And I said, my advice always is, you're far better sending something personal that matters to that person, and it matters, than a generic bottle of wine. What if the person doesn't drink? What if someone in their family is an alcoholic, and that's something they're trying to stay away from? What if they just don't like alcohol? What if there's a reason that is a kind of a useless gift to them? And yeah, they can regift it to somebody else, but you've kind of wasted your opportunity. So I've often told people, I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and most people who know me know that. And I've had people send me like a little Harry Potter Lego figure, which costs them the grand sum of about £2 at Tesco's, like $3. And the level of excitement that I have in that is significantly higher than a bottle of wine, because most wine gives me headaches. I've discovered that. So there's no point.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a few that don't. It's knowing somebody well enough to gift them with something that matters to them, which comes around to the core principle, which is relationship. It's all about relationship, building relationship, holding relationship, and showing that is what matters.
With that said, the employee must feel incredibly empowered to be able to do what they want without having to. Let me see how to say this. When I was in corporate, I had a budget card. I'm like, I always just go back to my own stories, right? Okay, so I had a budget card because I was in corporate sales. When funds got tight, or when, 3/4 of the way through the month, they started looking at how people weren't hitting their goals or whatever, they would put a limit on our budget cards. And not that we were out spending an exorbitant amount of money. We had a budget, but I mean, they would limit it. And then they would say, oh, now just go out and get these little, like, some of the stuff I just really kind of almost felt embarrassed giving people. And we, even though it was my job to find out what those people liked and then get them something specific, like that. So that was good. But it made me feel so bad when I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this, but yet I can't really do anything meaningful with this. That's really the word that comes up for me. I couldn't do anything meaningful.
Yeah, I think meaningful is the key thing. And I would even say, again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter the amount. You can do something meaningful with almost no money. I think one of the things I'm really struck by is the power of remembering what matters to people and connecting with them again on it. So, for example, if one of our clients says something like, oh, I have this, big event coming up, or I'm hiring an employee, or I'm getting new office premises, or I'm trying to get them and it's not working out. We try to remember those things and note them down so that we can ask them about it later. And usually, the level of clients that we have, we can usually remember it. But I personally try and write this stuff down because otherwise I will forget. And the level of impact it has when you text somebody and say, hey, did it work out with that employee that you were looking at hiring? Were they the right person? Was it a fit? I mean, that says, I noticed what you said. I paid attention to what you said. It matters to you, so it matters to me. And I'm going to check in and just see how you're doing and see how that impacts your life, your business, your work, our relationship. And that, I think, is what impacts us with people who care about us on a personal level. Family and those who are close to us will say things like, oh, I know you were on, I was just in the States for 3 weeks, a whole bunch of different work events. And the people who know me well would say, oh, how did your trip go? I saw you were in South Carolina. How was that? I saw you were in, they notice things and they ask about it. And the people who don't know you very well, that it just doesn't, and that's okay. The whole world doesn't have to know you. But if you're working on building relationship and being servant-hearted, I think we were talking about this in terms of generosity, that it all comes back to serving people and have a servant-hearted attitude. Part of that means considering the other person as better than yourself and really paying attention to them and their needs. And I think that absolutely applies to clients for sure, that you're looking for ways to have a meaningful relationship. And if you don't have a whole lot of money or don't have any money to spend, there are still things you can do to be generous with your time and your relationship and your attitude that not everybody does.
Completely agreed with that. And I know that, well, when I was doing it before I had to, it was part of my job to buy something. But yeah, I think I could have made much more meaningful progress doing things other than worrying about what I wrote down on a board that was a specific thing that I bought. You know what I mean? Like I said, it wasn't meaningful for me, even though it was like, oh, they love Westerns. So we went out and bought a Western DVD so they could watch a movie, which is great. But then I'm like, meh. So, but like you said, are they going to watch it? Do they have a DVD player? I don't really know any of that stuff. So I'm really making an assumption
has one of those anymore, but
right. Well, this was a long time ago. We're talking like almost a decade ago now since I've been in corporate. But yeah, and the thing is I tell my husband this a lot, the 5 love languages, and mine is acts of service, and it's not called gift giving, but it's giving something.
I think, it's gifts, I think,
Right.
Yeah.
And I tell my husband that all the time. I guess it's so funny because we tend to give our love language to other people, even though it's not their love language. So I love buying people gifts. It's my favorite thing. And it's not even a gift. Like he'll say, I don't know what to buy you. And I say, I don't care. Sometimes I just buy somebody like a pack of their favorite gum because I'm standing at the grocery store. I see their favorite gum. I go, oh my gosh, it made me think of that person. And maybe I'll buy a pack. And it seems like a ridiculous thing, but it's really because I thought about you. And that for me means something because that's my love language, right? I'm like, oh, you brought me a cert. I'm so excited because you know that I love certs, right? And that's really exciting to me. So I do love the fact that it doesn't, we talked about it doesn't have to cost a lot, that it's more about being meaningful, and feeling generous doesn't have to mean that equals money.
Yeah, and I really like your point about the 5 love languages. That's a book I really appreciated as well. And the point that impressed me the most from that book is what you were just saying, that people understand they are loved or appreciated or cared for in different ways. And he identifies 5 kind of core ways. And it's not as if you picked one of them and that was their primary and you did something else that they wouldn't feel appreciated at all. But there is a difference, and I'm a quality timer. So that means that the thing I appreciate the most is when somebody spends real focused time with me, usually alone or just with a small group of people. It's also why I really struggle with parties and big, massive groups. I just find them exhausting and you don't get much quality time. You have chit chat about the weather and work and, whatever. You got to move through the chit chat to get to the good stuff. So I kind of bear with it, but it's not my favorite. And that one's my core. So I love getting gifts. I think it's lovely. But if somebody only ever gave me gifts and never spent time with me, that wouldn't be enough for me to know that I'm truly cared for by them. And conversely, somebody else might, like you said, acts of service is another one. You could sit with them for 4 hours and listen to everything they have to say. And they are going, man, do you know what would have been great is if they just did my dishes or fix, put petrol in the car. Like something, some little act of service would mean more to them. So I loved your point. I just wanted to pinpoint that, is that when you're thinking generosity, you don't think, what would I want if it was me? You're thinking, what does this person want? What would they want most? And how do I be generous in that way? Is it, do I be generous with time? Do I be generous with a gift that costs money? How do I be generous?
Yes, absolutely. So we're talking about clients here a lot, but because we
Mm-hmm.
talk about the workplace here, we can talk about how we apply this to our employees the same. So if you're in leadership and you're really paying attention to your team, you are really paying attention to what, and we're talking love languages. There's a whole bunch of other different personality tests and things that people can take that tell you how they operate and what they love and what motivates them. But it's important as well for your team to feel that you're generous with them and that you're paying attention to the little things that matter, right? You're asking them the tiny little things that they're like, wow, I didn't even think she was listening to, or even knew that was happening, like with my child's baseball team or something like that, right? And it's just those little things, because if as a leader, so I'll just say, if I'm in the employee situation and my supervisor comes to me and says something I didn't expect, ask me about something in my personal life or something they know I'm going through, or just something that an event or whatever, right? And they're like, oh, how did that go? Like you said with the client, I'm already thinking, before I can even think of my answer, how it went, I'm thinking, wow, did you really just come and ask me something so nice? Just a wonderful thing like that. You really care about me. So I think it's important that, that we really realize that this happens at every level, and also the employees to their supervisor, because we talk a lot about leaders and how they can show up in the workplace for their employees. But I know for a fact that employees are listening to this podcast as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can turn it right around, and then you be generous to your lead or your supervisor and watch how that relationship begins to change.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And actually, that's interestingly not one that I've spent a whole lot of time thinking about. I think because my responsibility as a leader is to be the best leader I can be. And I do believe that will cause my team members to respond in kind. And I certainly have seen it at PF. The team are very generous. And that's one of the things that I love about the team members we have, and why we're so careful with our hiring process, because we have a certain kind of company. It works in a certain kind of way, and it doesn't work if you're not a generous person. And it does have to go both ways. So just as I would expect team members to, if there was urgently a need for, somebody to go to an event and they weren't planning on going to it, but we said, listen, we need you to be there and need to be at that time, and I know it's going to take you a little time to get there, that they would, as long as they didn't have something prearranged that they couldn't get out of, be willing to be generous and do that. And then vice versa, that I would then say something like, hey, you were up till midnight at this event, start a little later tomorrow. It has to go both ways. We had a team member recently who was really struggling with just like a virus, one of these things where you're not really sick, but you're not really well either. You're kind of operating between 50 and 80%, and you're kind of pressing on and pressing on. And this particular team member had just kept powering through and trying hard and really making an effort, and went to a couple events that they needed to go to, and just said, listen, I apologize, you guys. I'm kind of struggling here. I'm just fading a little. I'm really trying, but just bear with me. And I finally said, right, when you get back from this particular event, which was a couple of days long, I want you to just take the Friday off as a sick day. I don't want you to work. I don't want you to open emails. Matter of fact, take half of Monday as well. I think they had some appointments Monday. And I said, the reason we do that is because of the two pillars, rest pillar and generosity pillar. So rest pillar says we're serious about the fact that if you're not rested, you won't work well. And generosity pillar says, you've given a lot, so we're giving you something as well. And, it's kind of odd because I think true generosity gives with no expectation of receiving. But as I said, I do think you have to consider the relationship. And we were talking in the team meeting today about this. And I said, if we had somebody who is just constantly finishing 5 minutes early and barely squeaking through their time, that's not the kind of person that you'd be like, oh, sure, take another day, whatever, because you wouldn't feel that it was mutual. So I think that's back to your point about I can be generous because they are being generous and vice versa. And we both have to be considering it and be grateful for it. That's the other kicker. Everyone needs to be grateful for the opportunities that they have rather than resentful, rather than saying, well, I'm an employee, so of course they have to give me this and they have to give me that and they have to give me that. That attitude doesn't do anybody any good because you're not actually considering the needs of the company and the clients. All you're considering is your own needs. And as I said, that kind of person wouldn't work well at PF, which is why we don't have any like that. Mm-hmm. But I think there are a lot of employees who think mostly about themselves. And I think maybe that works in a big, massive company, but I don't think it works as a life philosophy anyway. I mean, you can get away with it in a big company, but I don't think that makes it right.
Yeah, I don't think it does either. And it absolutely is a two-way street. So Karen, we are coming to a close here. Our time is almost up. We have about 3.5 minutes. So this was a super fun conversation to have. But in closing, is there anything you think needed to be said that we didn't say?
I was just thinking about when we were closing off there and talking about, relationship, and you're considering where somebody else is at. I think at the end of the day, the core of what we were saying about servant leadership and considering other people better than yourself is that from time to time, your generosity may be a sacrifice of some kind. You may need to sacrifice more than you were, originally prepared to or considering or whatever. And I think that's when generosity goes to its highest level and actually maybe it even becomes something else like mercy or concept like that. But I think when you look at generosity, you might think, oh, that just means being nice and giving some gifts now and then. And I think it's wiser to look at it as like this rising scale and to always be willing to be somebody who defaults to being generous and leaning more towards the sacrificial side rather than defaulting to these are my rights, this is what I deserve, because true generosity puts yourself in essentially a more humble position, and that's what enables you to serve to the best of your ability.
Yes, beautifully said. That's leading with a servant heart, and I like that. So, Karen, thank you so much for being a guest again. I love
It's my absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I love that we had this conversation again. We're going to look forward to the next chat about PF's last pillar, which is integrity. And yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. So that'll come out next year. And don't forget to check the website, the Happy Healthy Workplace podcast, for show notes and links. This is the close of the Happy Healthy Workplace. Have a happy, healthy day. That's a wrap for today. The Happy Healthy Workplace podcast is now complete. Be sure to subscribe and join us weekly for secrets, solutions, or strategies that help you create a profitable business where people really want to work. This is Kimberly Ficklin, wishing you a happy, healthy day.